Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Breakthrough the Taboo Talk. We are thankful to have you here this evening with us. I'm here with Kristen Rivas.
Hi.
And hi, Kristen.
Hi.
And really tonight, we are having continuing discussions about connecting generations with open conversations around your mindfulness over money. And we get to have these conversations now, just like in life when we're growing up, and I think we're growing up at all different stages.
True.
We get to learn now what we know, and we get to tap into the wisdom of people who either we admire or are successful or doing what we want to do in the way we want to do it. And so one of the things that I've been able to do is over the years really transform my perspective and the steps that I take in how I approach my perspective around money.
Yeah.
And the conversations I have around it. And I know, Kristen, the reason why I have you here is because really, I think from generation to generation, sometimes we think that there's this gap, right, in the middle.
Yeah.
But we've been able to connect around having these conversations, just being open, no judgment, right? We saw that in the promo. No judgment. No judgment from your end to my end and my end to your end. One of the things I think that we got to see being in a group of women from the ages of mid-20s to mid-70s, I think that the younger generation is wishing we would have done something different for them, right? Why weren't we taught? Why weren't we educated? And I'm going to say my generation feels the same way at the 50s. And when we saw the 60s and 70s, they were like, we wish we would have if we would have only known ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Wasn't that eye-opening for you as well?
It was, and I think I didn't really realize how far back the issue kind of went, because I feel like I also never knew where the issue began. Right. So I didn't, I feel like what's the word I want to use? I feel like my generation just kind of always had this understanding that like this wasn't our fault because this is just like what was put onto us, but we've never been given like an actual answer as to like where the problem really came from to begin with. And I think through conversation, listening to like everyone else say their piece and like, noting that their ages in their 70s or in their 50s, it really just seems like this is a bigger issue than just like one generation. And it makes me wonder even more. It's like, okay, like where can we point our finger? Who can we point our finger at? Or when did it really begin? Like more questions come.
Yeah. Love that you have questions because that's so super important. And I think I think a lot of generations are going, where can we point the finger? Where do we do that? Right. What I realize with wealthy people who were successful, they stopped pointing the finger. They shifted that focus. It was that one little piece of, you know what? It doesn't matter where the issue started. It doesn't matter when it started. It's what can I do now? What actions can I take? Like what small steps can I take so that eventually, small steps. There's that book I love recommending, Atomic Habits, because or Tiny Habits. There's two different ones. One's by Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg and Atomic Habits by James Clear. Both amazing books. Really teaching about how do we take actionable steps. Well, the equation is always the same of who has to take the action. And that's you or me, I'll say.
Yeah.
And when we get that dynamic realized, regardless of who was the past problem, but I am now the future solution, it shifts everything because now we're looking at what's possible. When you look at blame, right, it's just a shift in perspective.
Yeah.
If we're looking for blame, then we're going to be perpetually looking for blame because I'm going to say people have been doing it, as we saw, for generation and generation. Right. And I love teasing it. It's about like, how many gray hairs do you want to have? As many as me or more? Or
well, I love the gray on you, but
when I say that to the men, it's like, well, at least you have the hair, and we get to have fun and poke fun at ourselves or one another. Because you know what, if we do come at it in a lighthearted fashion, that's another baby step. Rather than coming at it from a negative energy perspective, money, we want it to have a positive result. So we got to come from a positive energy perspective. That's why what's possible is always one of the most empowering questions you could ask day in and day out. And that's simple, because if you ask what's possible, possibility shows up. Our brain loves answering questions that we ask it, right?
That's so true.
So when we come from that perspective, we can shift it. So the next step is, how do we get people started to learning? And that's by just sharing. And I think really just by what we're doing here today, and I see that we have one person watching right now. Yay. Thank you for watching.
Hi.
We want to do this just to spread the word of what's possible generation to generation, because then we can stop old systemic ways of teaching. We can break, you and I right now, the action step we're taking is breaking patterns, breaking old patterns.
Yeah.
And in the group, we got to do that too. What's that?
I just said, patterns, because it really, like, when you talk about the positive mindset, it's such daily work, like just catching yourself in that moment and recognizing, like, I have a choice right now to either continue doing that or to make that change. And literally yesterday I was driving around with one of my friends, and she just ordered food. Like, she was like, I'm hungry, I need to order food, but I'm so upset that I need to spend money. Like, now I'm losing money, like that money's gone. And in that moment I told her, I was like, but your money is taking care of you because your money is feeding you. Like, that's why you have your money. Like, it's okay. Like, I was like, positive, but I also felt what she was saying, because eating out does add up 100%. I loved when you pointed out that, like, the average, didn't you say, like, the average American spends like $20 a day on, like, eating food out? Or
they overspend in general. They overspend to a tune of over $20 a day.
Right. And it's so easy. Like,
and it's simple. Yeah, it's simple and easy to do, because most of us aren't spending time with our money, right? Yet money is our part. We want to be in partnership with our money.
Yeah.
And a good partnership requires time and attention.
Yeah.
So if you want your money to love you back, you got to pay attention to it. They talk about the shift of focus. What you focus on grows. That's the law of increase.
Wow.
So there's a universal law out there that is the law of increase, and what you focus on grows. If you focus on negative thoughts, right, or even negative expectations, think about when you're coming into a room, maybe somebody that's maybe you have some contention with.
Right.
And your expectation is that there's going to be more contention, right? More angst. Well, your body dynamic has already changed.
Yeah.
Before you ever got into the room. So you're already giving vibrations off with contention. So you actually started it before you got in the room.
Oh.
So when we're mindful of that, and I'm going to say I have seen, personally, I've had that happen. And what I try to do, hi, Davide, good to see you.
Hi.
Great to see you. So if we can shift that, and I'm not saying it's easy, but it's simple. It can get to be easy when you just show up as your best self and say, you know what? I'm going to say something funny that makes them laugh. Like, I went someplace and I was going to be someplace where I knew that there might be some contention. And when I showed up, I said, okay, the vino's here, so all is good for the day.
Oh my gosh.
Instead of saying hello, I just because I brought wine. And I just, the vino is now here. Now everything is all good. They started laughing. It shifted. You like that? Energy. Right? So you shifted the energy already. You already created the energy in the room. Then to maintain it can be some work, but it can be a practice, like you said, to have fun. And imagine if we showed up that way around our money. Imagine if we had more education, and every family had education. Now they feel confident. They know what questions to ask. They're feeling more and more empowered day in and day out.
Yeah.
So learning about money, one of the things that's been happening is we still have primarily a system that is teaching us old ways of learning about money, right? Do you know the numbers? It kind of almost is like where it creates angst. Do your budget. there's this self-deprivation. No, 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 you shouldn't overspend. And see, your friend spending on food just has to be mindful. Is she really overspending on food that's excessive? Could she have gone home and maybe made something that's a little less expensive? Yes, it takes a little time, but how much time really?
Right.
Because, overspending on food, eating out is a big, I find with clients, they can spend upwards of
All money goes
$300 to $400 a month over. So it's like maybe just by cutting, going, and not that I want to do, like this is pandemic post, well, we're not even post, we're in the pandemic times. Restaurants are just now opening up. But if we're being mindful, and it's mindfulness, I'm being mindful over my money. I have control. I get to lead it. It's not deprivation. It's just I'm leading what I've got.
Right.
And when we're in charge of small things, we lead them well. Then more comes and you get in charge of more things, and that responsibility grows. In a good way. Not, some people are afraid of that word, responsibility. There's three things I think,
so true.
You hear the phrase, spare the rod, spoil the child.
I've actually never heard that one.
So sparing the rod, it's actually it's biblical. And when you're sparing, teaching your kids discipline, respect, order, and discipline. These are the three words. Really is what back then it was maybe swatting them, right? But really it's what the intention, again, intention is to teach respect, order, and discipline. That spells ROD, R-O-D, respect, order, discipline. That's what you're teaching. So now how can we do that without punishment, maybe in a positive way, especially at the beginning? Because when somebody doesn't understand, that's why you need to take time to teach them so that they can learn, so that then this way we can pass on a different way of learning. And we saw that even in the workshop, that the money education movement, where people were like, there's a whole lot of mindset work being done. When are we going to get to the numbers? So what was the phrase that was being said? Trust the process. Because really the formula for success is your behavior, plus your knowledge, plus the skill set equals the results. You take any, and it's a multiplication. It's not plus, it's times. Because if either one, any one of those, if behavior is 0 times the other, then your whole equation is 0. It's a multiplication equation. Super impactful. And once the women were like, okay, you get to just let go for right now. And this isn't just for women. This is for men, women, children. It just happened to be a room full of women that we got to experience. And at the end of it, and actually even during it, epiphanies were happening. Eye-opening nuggets were being shared, right? What was, like, for you, maybe one thing, or I don't know if you have any one thing or a couple things that you want to share that was like the popper for
so many, but the one that I feel like was really out there for me that I just would have never got to on my own was the celebration of money. Because, like, I feel like especially for people like in my generation too, I mean, I don't want to just generalize, but I think like it's so easy for us to just be like, oh, I have to spend money on this, or like, oh, I have to feed myself. And like, we're so aware of like when we're like losing money, or our thought automatically doesn't see it as like, oh, this is like an exchange for something else to like give me that. It's like I'm losing my money. And so when you said like we should celebrate money, like when we go to the bank, like put on a happy song, like start associating it with like a good time, or like be excited when you're like depositing money or taking out money. And that just like was so like, I would have never thought of that, like ever. So then when I went to the bank after the boot camp, I was like, okay, here's my happy song. Like, let's go. Like, I was trying to make it a celebration. So that really stood out to me. And I had so many nuggets, but that one I think was like the biggest one.
That's a great one. Exactly. Celebrating everything that we have. I mean, gratitude speaks volumes. And I think, again, The more gratitude you have and the more that you see, the more that it expands and grows.
Yeah.
So I started talking about, in the beginning, we talk about setting our intentions. So I call this a money accumulation pathway system. So maps, it's the direction that we want to go. So when we know the purpose of what we want to do and we set our intention of what we want to do, that's a great guided pathway. And then we're looking at managing our expectations, right? Because a lot of times, there are some of us that really like to overshoot for failure. So we don't want to do that. But what we can do is we can have that goal, right? The shooting for the moon and hitting the stars. And what are the stars goals that is attainable? So at least make this one where it's totally doable and this one where you're reaching for the moon. That created big shifts for everybody because now you just released the pressure. You get to do something that is going to be successful, not self-deprecating.
Yeah. And that was a big one.
And that's a big one.
How money is not a story of self-deprivation. It's a story of enjoyment.
A story. So what is the story of enjoyment? And how can we get there? Well, there's actions that we got to take with our contributions and connection and maybe collaboration. Those are the action steps to the pathway system. But I think the biggest thing is like, how do you remember? I don't know if I'm putting you on the spot, but what was the guide? What was the guide for most people?
The compass?
Yeah, what was the compass?
Like our values?
Yes, the values.
Yeah.
So really, that was the anchor for most people to figure out what their top 5 values were, put it into a compass, right? What's the heart, that driver for you?
Right.
This way, every time you could go back and align and make sure everything that you were doing, it was like this checkpoint system, constant checkpoints. Wait, am I aligned? I feel off. What's off, right?
And I love that you did that so much. Like that was another nugget just because after I had that, and it did take a minute because I remember in the exercise, you gave us like so many words and you're like, okay, you might have 20 to start, but then like get your 20 and narrow it down to your 5. And then once I had my 5 and I went to bed that night, I just started thinking like, wow, any moment in my life where I felt off, it's because one of those 5 words just was not present in that situation. And it made so much sense.
And like, it was so easy. It became easy, right? It wasn't, it's not as challenging anymore. And then you're changing based on those values, the words that you're saying to yourself, which is super important. Because the words are our world. And we can either choose to follow indoctrinated thinking, right? That's been imposed on us, like how money has been taught for years and years, and expect different results, which we all know is the definition of insanity, which we feel like we've been running in circles trying to figure this out. This is why one of the things for me, I was like, I got to figure this out because I can't keep living life where I'm doing all the right steps, but the things were not happening the way they should have.
Yeah.
So I got to formulate my thinking, right? And look at things like checking people's character. Like when you're checking out people that you're aligning with and their character, like the 6 pillars, are they in integrity? Are they respectful and mindful of you? Look at them. Are they responsible citizens? Are they showing up in the world?
Yeah.
Do they have an air of fairness about them, right? Is it about you or is it all about them? And you can tell in your conversation if there's a give and take, or are they telling you all their accolades and everything they know about what's their thing? We all know those people, right? That they're like, but I've done this and I have all this knowledge and I have all these letters behind my name. But that doesn't always mean that the other pieces are in check.
Right.
And that they're caring. They care about you. They want to know about you, your purpose, right?
Yeah.
And they're just like I said, good citizens. So we can create this system of being anchored in people being aligned with us, with our values.
Right.
And we talked a lot about in there because a lot of people are still, I believe, full of hope that things can be changed. And so they're waiting for this. And the hope is not necessarily the strategy, right? Hope's not a strategy.
No.
But it is a driver to your vision. right? And we talked about being really clear about what that looked like and what that felt like.
Yeah.
And many people have not even experienced just closing their eyes and just kind of being at that future space where we get to celebrate
Right.
where our future is, where it is. Like, we get to determine that. And most of us think that we have to live the day to day where we just follow. I'm going to say follow the leader. That's usually a leader that's leading. That's a blind person that's leading the blind.
Yeah.
I hear about lunchroom talk all the time about how do we set up our retirement accounts, because they're not being taught, right? Yeah. And then when they leave their work, something happens and their money ends up being depleted, whether it's fees or a market crash, and they don't know why. Or after retirement, they're out of their money within the first 7 years.
Yeah.
And then they're like, oh my gosh, I can't go back to work. I don't know what to do. And they're starting over because nobody at the beginning listened to them. And that's what we were hearing about, the future. And so now what do we get to do for your generation? One, you get to hold visions, because we stopped dreaming in school because we were being taught in an industrial system.
Mm-hmm.
So now we're getting taught. I'm going to say there are a lot of schools, home schools, which are teaching in new, innovative ways, charter schools, to create the shift, just like they did in the school system, we can do in the money learning system, which is super amazing, because then it gives you clarity.
Right.
And you get to direct your focus, right?
Mm-hmm. One would hope. Yes.
One would hope. Yeah. Because if you're directing it, right, it's not directing you.
True.
And most of us, I think that was a big question, is your focus directing you, or are you directing it? That's the same of, is your money, are you in bondage of your money? Are you leading your money? Are you trapped by every time you have to make a decision?
Right.
Versus having that freedom to make your choices. So I know that when we had our the focus session, your feeling on and your take on, like, were you feeling, or were you getting this, what was the sense of the feeling of the room of, were people more feeling when they thought about this question of where their focus goes with their money, to what they had or what they were missing?
Oh, everyone was like gravitating towards what they were missing. And I mean, it makes sense. I think that's why the mindset portion of the boot camp was so powerful, because you don't even I don't want to say you don't realize, because you know that your relationship to your money most of the time is negative. Not everybody, but like for the most part. But you never really like sit with it and look at it for what it is and like address it and be like, oh, this is actually a negative relationship, but I've created it. Like, I'm the reason why it's negative. And then when it's easy to say like that the money leads you and you're chasing the money, you're like, well, I don't need to be. I get to lead my money.
Yep, yeah. Your money gets to chase you, follow you, not
money
chase
you. Follow.
Chase you too.
Yeah.
It's great if it's chasing you. Mm-hmm. And then the reality is, there are people where the money is chasing them and they have lots of money, right?
Right.
And then they don't know what to do, because they want to be mindful and responsible with it, but yet nobody's really trained them either how to do that. That's why we see lottery winners losing all of their money immediately, because nobody's trained them on, hey, what do you want? What's the purpose? What do you want from those dollars? What were you going to say?
Such a great point that I would have never thought of.
Yeah.
That's so true. Because just like that misunderstanding that I just think that we're like, oh, they have money, they're taken care of. That automatic like write-off. Because like, oh,
really cool. Wouldn't it be really cool if they had to take a class before they actually received their first payment, just so that they were well educated, so that this way they could be empowered and then know what they want to do with their money. Because a lot of times there are systems where they could create that lifetime income and never run out of it, especially with those kinds of volumes. And they never touch it, and then they have income forever. But no one teaches about that, or I don't want to say no one teaches, because that's not the word.
Right. But they might not know where to go to find it. It's not just common knowledge,
And I think that teaching is starting to happen more and more as I see colleagues across the nation starting to do these teachings, so that because we view that an educated society, especially when it comes to finances, is an elevated society, and rising tides raises all ships. So if people know the purpose of their money, you know what, you get to be the boss. This is one thing that I thought was that I got the most feedback on, is that you as the boss over your money before it goes out and gets distributed to whoever you hire for whatever reason, whether it's you're going to school and you're paying your dollars to employ that teacher or professor, whether it's, you know, the bank person, that your financial person that you're meeting with, whoever it is that you get to have clarity and be in control, and just by learning what are the right questions to ask. Because that's one thing I also talked about that I felt had most impact that we wanted to share, is being the question queen or king is actually the highest point of intelligence that you could be at, because you have the most room for growing and learning.
Right.
And this gets to be taught to us now, because before it was, do not be a disruptor, don't, you know, break the flow.
So true.
Instead, what you're actually doing is helping the flow, and helping other people in the room that might be not able to or fearful to ask the questions. So I always tell people, ask questions, because you deserve it. You're worthy of really protecting your money, persevering with it, preserving it, right? Preserving it even from Uncle Sam. And when I say that in the most upright sense of, really, overpaying in taxes happens so often. I was just speaking with my tax planner today, and having a great tax planner is super, super vital, because then you're not overspending in taxes in your lifetime. Overpaying money that rightfully belongs to you. And this is why taking time and having a good relationship and having a good team on your side, a good financial educator or coach, you know, a great tax planner, I'm going to say a great estate and trust attorney. Those are a few of the things I think that are essential. So we get to learn what wealthy people know and do what smart money people do in really simple fashions, and we get to break it down step by step. So we get to be part of the solution versus the problem.
And now we've come full circle.
Come completely full circle.
You don't have to point the finger at anyone.
You don't have to point the finger at anyone. We all get to be empowered. We all get to really create the possibility in the world of shift and change. And we get to do it right now, because as I was trained in leadership, life is now. And what you do now affects you a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And that's what every leader, successful leader, knows. So we get to start planting our own seeds so that we can grow and flourish. And as you know, I love that we get to flourish together. And I'm so thankful that you were here with me giving feedback for connecting the generations over breaking through the taboo talk. I want to say thank you to our audience members and everybody else who's here. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to share or say, or just a ciao for now is great. You're good.
I'm ready to lead my money.
I love it. Double high five. Ready to lead our money now. All right. Thank you so much, and we look forward to the next time. Thank you, Kristen. Ciao for now.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Bye.